Phish show trip, an LSD and mushroom trip report from 1999, uploaded to Aerowit on June 10, 2000. This was honestly the best night of my life. It took place July the 12th, 1999. A good friend of mine and I had been waiting for this day for what seemed like ages. We were off to a Phish show in Mansfield, Massachusetts. We both had planned to trip there. I had done acid once before, however, was eager to try it again. We got our gear ready and headed for the concert, smoking an occasional bowl in my glass bubbler on the ride up, anxiously awaiting the show. When we got there, I was amazed at how easily it was to retrieve drugs, just about anything imaginable. One thing I would like to mention at this point is that buying drugs from people you do not know isn't bright. You could be taking anything, and I don't recommend it. We were a little cautious at first, fearing narcs and whatnot. But eventually someone approached our car and offered us liquid. I accepted the offer. We paid him, then he asked me to place out my hand, palm down. I did, and I counted 7 drops of the acid dropped on my hand. I instantly licked it off. My friend did the same. We had about an hour till the doors opened for the show. I remembered from my last trip that it kicked in about 45 minutes after ingestion. It had been about that time and we both hadn't felt a thing. I began to fear that we had been ripped off. Now completely convinced that we had been fooled, we purchased a quarter of mushrooms and began to munch on those. My friend had been eating about 2 caps and decided that they were gross and didn't want to eat anymore. So I was left to finish the bag. Now it had been 5:30 and the doors were now open. We smoked a few more bowls and headed to the gates. Almost instantly, as we got up out of our smoke-filled car, I began to feel a strange feeling, as if someone was tickling me lightly, all on my legs, arms and face. This body high was unbelievable. I knew that no mushrooms would take effect within 10 minutes, so I feared that we were never ripped off and concluded that this was going to be a fun night. By the time we got in the show and found a seat, the acid was working tremendously, and I could start to feel the beginning effects of the mushrooms. My mind was racing. I was thinking about so many different things. I pondered about my life and what kind of person I was. I felt as if everything and everyone in the world was beautiful. I felt no hate to anything. I was at one with myself for the first time. It was going to be a good show. The visuals were just as strong as the body high. I watched my friend's face melt before me and also saw a lot of traces and color distortion. Our seats were on the lawn, people as far as the eye could see. It was an amazing sight. I found myself talking to persons I had never met before, which is not like myself. As soon as the show started, I felt as if I was beginning to peak. The music was loud and I loved it. I could feel every string on the guitar, every beat on the drum, every note on the piano, and all the bass flow through my body. The feeling was exotic, my mind was still racing. It was almost overwhelming. I felt as if I was on some sort of mission searching for something, but I didn't know what. My friend and I hardly talked until the intermission. I knew he was feeling the same as me. During one part of the show, all the people in the lawn took their glow sticks and necklaces and began to throw them in the air. This sight was amazing. I looked over the crowd of people and saw bright neon flashing colors bouncing off every person in the crowd. This continued for what felt like a good 5 minutes straight. I stared in awe for that entire time. This was the best night of my life. Happy people and mind-blowing music. By the time intermission hit, I was completely fucked up, almost too much. However, we did take an excessive dose. I almost couldn't control myself. I couldn't have a conversation because I was just thinking so much. I looked at my friend, he smiled, and I did the same. We both knew we were having a great time and no words needed to be shared. At one point during intermission, someone came up to us, noticed that I was wearing 3D glasses, the kind you see at fireworks. After talking to me, he knew I was tripping my balls off, and he took advantage of this. He introduced himself to me, saying, "Hi, my name is Jim," and he reached and shook my hand. He continued to do this. He kept saying, "Hi, my name is Jim," as if to keep my mind on that thought. Eventually, I looked down and noticed he had his hands in my pocket. He had what was left of our herb and my bubbler. I took back my stuff and pushed him down. I was extremely frightened by this, knowing that I had no idea that Jim was tooling through my pockets. I almost lost all my stuff. I was convinced that this person had figured I was tripping and probably had done this to people throughout the night. Luckily, I caught him before it was too late. After this strange happening, I stayed on top of myself for the remainder of the night. I took control of what was going on and was a lot more aware of my surroundings. Next, Phish started the second set. I was still feeling great and knew the night was still young. I had a lot more visuals in the second half of the show. I remember looking at the blue and purple lights shine on the crowd in front of us. It looked like a purple/blue ocean of people flowing all around me. The light show was incredible and added a whole new perspective to my visuals. I was in my own fantasy world, and I wanted to stay in that moment forever. I wished everyone could experience this with me. During the trip, I realized a lot about myself and my life. I wanted to be a better person, and I feel I am since that day. All the thinking from that night relieved my mind of a great weight which had been holding me back for a while. But like all good things, the show came to an end. I had such a positive trip, besides that gym instance, but the whole night was an experience I won't forget. It was like a story that all made sense in the end. I suppose anyone who has tripped knows exactly what I'm talking about. Now that we weren't tripping as hard as before, we sat in the car, smoked, and talked about our experience. The next morning my mind and body was tired, but I felt fine. Just rested for the day. I find it hard to tell people about the Phish show. It was too amazing to explain with words. To this day, I look at the concert stop and remember that night. I can actually say that I'm glad that I tripped. I truly believe it changed who I am in a positive way.